Let me ask you something real quick. When was the last time something went completely wrong in your life? Maybe you lost your job. Maybe a relationship fell apart. Maybe you failed at something you worked incredibly hard for. Now, here's the thing. Most people don't realize that moment, that crisis, that thing that felt like it was destroying everything, that was only 10% of your problem. The other 90%, that was all you. And before you think I'm being harsh, let me explain why understanding this could completely transform how you handle every single challenge that comes your way for the rest of your life. Lesson 1. The emotional trap versus the 1090 reality. Picture this. You're cruising through life. Everything's going smoothly. Work is good. Relationships are solid. Your finances are stable. You've got this comfortable rhythm going. And then, out of nowhere, something hits you. Something you didn't see coming. Something you had absolutely zero control over. Maybe you get laid off during company restructuring. Maybe your partner suddenly says they need space. Maybe you fail an exam you studied weeks for. Maybe a business deal you were counting on falls through. Maybe a health issue pops up out of nowhere. This is what I call the unavoidable 10%. This is the part of life that happens to you, whether you like it or not. The universe doesn't ask your permission. Life doesn't check your schedule. These things just happen. But here's where it gets interesting, and this is where most people completely miss the point. That 10%, that initial crisis, that's not what destroys you. What destroys you is the other 90%, and that 90%, that's entirely based on how you respond. Think about it. Two people lose their jobs on the same day. Same company, same position, same severance package. 6 months later, one of them is thriving in a better role, maybe even started their own thing. The other? Still bitter, still blaming the economy, still stuck in the same mental space they were the day they got that termination notice. Same situation. Completely different outcomes. What's the difference? The 10% was identical. The 90% was worlds apart. Here's the brutal truth most of us don't want to admit. We take that 10% and we turn it into 100%. We take one bad thing and we let it contaminate everything else. We take a job loss and suddenly our entire identity crumbles. We take a breakup and suddenly we're unlovable. We take one failure and suddenly we're failures at everything. The problem isn't actually as big as we think it is. The problem is our reaction makes it bigger. I want you to really sit with this for a second, because this isn't just some motivational fluff. This is neuroscience. This is psychology. This is how your brain actually works. When something unexpected and negative happens, there's a part of your brain called the amygdala that immediately kicks into high gear. This little almond-shaped cluster of neurons is basically your brain's alarm system. Its job is to detect danger and react fast. And when I say fast, I mean faster than your conscious thinking can even keep up. The moment the amygdala senses a threat, whether it's a physical danger or an emotional one, it triggers what's called the fight or flight response. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing gets shallow and rapid. Stress hormones flood your system. Your entire body goes into survival mode. And here's the kicker. When you're in this state, the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for logical thinking, decision-making, and rational analysis, it basically takes a back seat. It gets temporarily weakened. which means in that moment when you most need to think clearly, your brain is literally designed to react emotionally instead. This is why when you're panicking, you can't make good decisions. This is why when you're overwhelmed, you freeze. This is why when you're stressed, you do things you later regret. It's not because you're weak. It's not because you're broken. It's because your brain is doing exactly what it evolved to do, which is to protect you from immediate danger. The problem? In modern life, most of our threats aren't actually life or death situations. They're psychological, they're emotional, they're social. But your brain doesn't know the difference. To your amygdala, losing your job feels just as dangerous as being chased by a predator. Getting rejected feels just as threatening as physical harm. So what happens? You go into panic mode over things that, while difficult, aren't actually going to kill you. And in that panic, you make it worse. You fixate on the problem instead of the solution. You ruminate on, why did this happen to me, instead of, what can I do about it now? You replay the situation over and over like a broken record. And let me tell you, this mental loop is exhausting. It drains your energy, it consumes your time, it occupies your thoughts. But here's the thing. All that energy expenditure, it produces zero results. The problem doesn't get smaller. You just get more tired. This is what I call the emotional trap. And it's dangerous because it feels productive. It feels like you're doing something. You're thinking about it constantly. You're analyzing it. You're discussing it with everyone who'll listen. But you're not actually moving forward. You're just spinning your wheels. Now, there's a reason your brain works this way. It's called negativity bias. Your brain is naturally wired to focus more on problems than solutions, more on threats than opportunities, more on what's wrong than what's right. This made perfect sense for our ancestors. If you were living 10,000 years ago and you heard a rustle in the bushes, it was way more important to assume it might be a lion and run than to assume it's probably nothing and get eaten. The humans who paid more attention to danger survived and passed on their genes. The overly optimistic ones, not so much. So we inherited brains that are constantly scanning for problems, that amplify negative experiences, that remember bad things more vividly than good things, that assume the worst-case scenario. This was great for survival in a physically dangerous world. But in today's world, it works against us. It makes small problems feel massive. It makes temporary setbacks feel permanent. It makes challenges feel insurmountable. Let me give you a real example. Imagine you're a marketing manager in Berlin. You've been at your company for 3 years. You've worked your way up. You're good at what you do. And then one day, you have a big presentation to the board. You've prepared for weeks. You know your material inside and out. But on the day of, you freeze. You stumble through it. You can feel the disappointment in the room. The presentation goes badly. That's your 10%. That's the thing that happened. Now here's where the 90% kicks in. Response. Option A. You spiral. You tell yourself you're terrible at your job. You avoid eye contact with your colleagues for days. You start second-guessing every decision you make. You stop volunteering for projects because what if you mess up again? You lose confidence. You withdraw. You start browsing job sites thinking maybe you're just not cut out for this role. 6 months later, you're still haunted by that one presentation. You've essentially let that one bad day define your entire professional identity. Response option B. You acknowledge it sucked. You feel the embarrassment. But then you ask yourself, okay, what specifically went wrong? Maybe you didn't practice the delivery enough. Maybe you didn't anticipate certain questions. Maybe you let the pressure get to you. You schedule a follow-up with your boss, get feedback, and actually implement it. You volunteer to present again within the next month to prove to yourself you can do better. You use that failure as data, not as identity. 6 months later, you're actually a better presenter than you were before, and that one bad presentation is just a small blip in your career story. Same 10%. Completely different 90%. And the outcomes? Night and day. This is the power of understanding the 10/90 principle. The event itself is often just a small fraction of the total impact. How you respond. That's where the real damage or the real growth happens. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. This sounds like you're blaming me for everything that goes wrong. That's not what I'm saying at all. The 10% is real. The crisis is real. The pain is real. I'm not minimizing that. What I'm saying is that you have way more power than you think. When you're in the middle of a crisis, it feels like everything is out of your control. But the truth is, there's a huge portion that is in your control. Your thoughts, your actions, your focus, your energy, your next steps. That's all yours. And the moment you realize that, something shifts. You stop being a victim of your circumstances, and you start becoming the architect of your response. Let me break down what happens in your brain when you make this shift. When you consciously decide to take action, even a small one, you're essentially overriding that automatic panic response. You're telling your prefrontal cortex to come back online. You're shifting from reactive mode to responsive mode. And here's the beautiful part. Action kills panic. Every single time. The fastest way to get out of an emotional spiral is to do something. Anything. It doesn't have to be big. It doesn't have to solve the entire problem. Just one small step forward. Because here's what happens when you take action. Your brain gets feedback. It realizes, oh, I'm not completely helpless here. I can actually do something. And that feedback loop starts to calm your nervous system. Your heart rate comes down. Your breathing steadies. Your thinking clears. Suddenly, instead of being overwhelmed by the enormity of the problem, you're focused on the specificity of the next step. And that's manageable. That's doable. That's within your control. Let me give you a practical example. Say you're a freelance graphic designer in Chicago. Business has been good. But then suddenly, 3 major clients cancel their contracts in the same week. Maybe the economy's shifting. Maybe they're cutting costs. Doesn't matter why. The result is the same. Your income just dropped by 60% overnight. That's your 10%. That's the crisis. Now, what's your 90%? You could spend the next 2 weeks in bed, refreshing your bank account, doom scrolling through job boards, and having panic attacks about rent. You could call everyone you know and complain about how unfair it is. You could convince yourself that you're a terrible designer, and this is proof you should have never gone freelance in the first place. Or you could take a different approach. You could give yourself 1 day to feel the shock and process the emotions. Then you could sit down and make a plan. Update your portfolio. Reach out to 10 new potential clients. Offer a limited time discount to get new business in the door. Join a local networking group. Maybe even pick up a part-time gig to bridge the gap while you rebuild. Same crisis. But one response leaves you paralyzed and broke. The other leaves you resilient and rebuilding. Now, I want to address something important. Taking action doesn't mean ignoring your emotions. It doesn't mean pretending everything's fine. It doesn't mean toxic positivity where you just slap a smile on and push through. Emotions are data. They're information. They're telling you something matters to you. So feel them. Acknowledge them. Sit with them for a bit. But don't live there. Don't set up camp in the emotional trap. Here's a simple practice that can help. When something goes wrong, give yourself a specific time window to process the emotion. Maybe it's 20 minutes. Maybe it's a day. But put a boundary on it. Say, okay, for the next hour, I'm going to feel everything I need to feel about this. I'm going to be sad, angry, frustrated, whatever comes up. But after that hour, I'm shifting into action mode. This does two things. First, it honors the fact that you're human and emotions are valid. Second, it prevents you from getting stuck in an endless loop of rumination. Because here's the thing. Problems don't go away because you thought about them really hard. They don't disappear because you worried enough. They don't solve themselves because you replayed the situation 1,000 times in your head. Problems get solved through action, through decisions, through movement, through doing something different than what got you into the situation in the first place. And this is where most people get stuck. They know they need to take action, but they're waiting to feel ready, waiting to feel confident, waiting to have all the answers, waiting for the perfect plan. But here's the secret. You're never going to feel ready. Confidence doesn't come before action. It comes from action. Clarity doesn't come from thinking, it comes from doing. You don't think your way out of a crisis, you act your way out. So what does that actually look like in practice? Let me walk you through a framework. Step 1. Pause. Not for days, not for weeks, but for a moment. Take a breath. Literally. Deep breath in. Slow breath out. This physiologically calms your nervous system. It gives your prefrontal cortex a chance to come back online. It creates just enough space between the event and your reaction for you to choose your response instead of just defaulting to panic. Step 2. Assess. Ask yourself, what just happened? Not, why did this happen to me? Not, what does this mean about me? Just the facts. What actually occurred? Strip away the story you're telling yourself and look at the situation objectively. Step 3. Identify what's in your control. Make 2 lists. 1. Things I can influence or change. 2. Things I cannot. Then, and this is crucial, put all your energy into list 1. Let go of list 2. You can't control the economy. You can't control other people's decisions. You can't control timing or luck. But you can control your effort, your attitude, your next steps, your focus. Step 4. Take 1 action, not 10, not 100. 1. What's the smallest thing you can do right now that moves you even slightly in the right direction? Do that. Then do the next thing, then the next. Build momentum through micro actions. This is how you escape the emotional trap. This is how you reclaim your 90%. And look, I'm not saying this is easy, especially in the moment when everything feels like it's falling apart. But I am saying it's possible. And I'm saying it gets easier with practice. Every time you successfully navigate a crisis using this approach, you're building what psychologists call resilience. You're training your brain to respond differently. You're creating new neural pathways that bypass the automatic panic response. And over time, you'll notice something incredible. The same situations that used to completely derail you now barely faze you. Not because the situations got easier, but because you got stronger, you got smarter, you got more skilled at managing your responses. This is the real power of the 1090 principle. It's not just about surviving one crisis. It's about fundamentally changing how you relate to challenges. It's about transforming from someone who life happens to into someone who happens to life. Because at the end of the day, you can't always control what happens to you, but you can always control what happens in you and what happens through you. The event is 10%. Your response is 90%. Master your response, and you master your life. Remember, every single person who's achieved anything meaningful has faced setbacks. The difference between those who made it and those who didn't isn't that they had easier circumstances. It's that they had better responses. So the next time something goes wrong, and it will because that's life, I want you to pause, take a breath, and remind yourself, this is just the 10%. I control the 90%. And that's where my power lives. Lesson 2, deconstructing chaos into data points. You know that feeling when everything in your life seems to be falling apart at the same time, when it's not just one thing going wrong, but like 5 things, maybe 10 things, all crashing down simultaneously? Your work is a mess. Your relationships are strained. Your finances are tight. Your health is suffering. Your confidence is shot. And your brain is just screaming, I can't handle this. That feeling, that overwhelming sense of chaos? Let me tell you something that might surprise you. That chaos isn't real. I mean, the problems are real. The challenges are real. But a chaos? That's just your brain's way of saying, I don't know how to organize all this information. Chaos is just unorganized data. That's it. That's all it is. Think about it like this. Imagine you're standing in front of a massive wall, like enormous, so big you can't even see the top. And someone tells you, hey, you need to move this wall. Your immediate reaction is probably going to be, that's impossible. There's no way. I can't do that. But now imagine someone comes along and says, actually, this wall is made of individual bricks. Let's move it one brick at a time. Suddenly, it doesn't feel impossible anymore. It feels manageable, doable, maybe even straightforward. Same wall, same amount of work, but completely different perception. That's the power of deconstructing chaos into data points. When a personal crisis hits, our brains have this tendency to lump everything together into one giant, terrifying blob of problems. We see it as this single, massive, insurmountable thing. And that perception is what paralyzes us. But here's what I want you to understand. That giant blob, it's actually made up of specific, identifiable, separate issues. And when you break them down, when you look at each piece individually, they become so much more manageable. Let me give you a real example. Say you're a 32-year-old project manager in Amsterdam. On the surface, it feels like your entire life is imploding. You're stressed out of your mind. You can't sleep. You feel like you're drowning. If someone asks you what's wrong, you might just say, everything is wrong. But let's actually break that down. What's everything? Well, you're behind on a major work deadline and your boss is breathing down your neck. That's one thing. You're also having communication issues with your partner because you've been so stressed that you're snapping at them. That's a second thing. Your gym membership is collecting dust because you haven't had time to work out in 3 months and you're feeling physically terrible. That's a third thing. You're also worried about money because you've been stress spending on takeout instead of cooking. That's a fourth thing. See what just happened? Everything turned into 4 specific things. And yes, 4 things happening at once is a lot, but it's not everything. It's 4 identifiable issues, and each one of them can be addressed separately. The moment you make that distinction, something shifts in your brain. The overwhelming blob starts to break apart. And when it breaks apart, you can actually start to see solutions. But here's where most people get stuck. Even when they know their problems are separate, they still try to tackle them all at once. They think they need to fix everything simultaneously. And that's just another form of overwhelm. So let me introduce you to a concept that's going to change how you handle complex situations. It's called signal versus noise. In any chaotic situation, there's signal and there's noise. The signal is the core issue, the thing that actually matters, the problem that, if solved, would make the biggest difference. The noise is everything else, all the secondary stuff, the distractions, the things that feel urgent but aren't actually important. Most people spend their energy on the noise. They get caught up in the drama, the opinions, the what-ifs, the things they can't control, and they exhaust themselves without ever addressing the actual signal. Here's a practical example. Let's say you're a small business owner in Toronto. Sales have been declining for 3 months straight. You're panicking. You're reading every business book you can find. You're watching endless YouTube videos about marketing. You're asking advice from everyone who'll listen. Your friends say one thing, your family says another, some random guy on LinkedIn says something completely different. You're drowning in information and opinions. That's noise. All of it. It might feel productive, but it's actually just creating more confusion. The signal, the actual data. How many customers did you lose? Where did they go? What specifically changed 3 months ago? What do your numbers actually tell you? Not what you think, not what you fear, not what other people assume. What does the data say? When you cut through the noise and focus on a signal, clarity emerges. Maybe you realize that you didn't actually lose customers. You lost one type of customer because you raised prices. But you gained a different type who spends more. Or maybe you see that the decline started right when you changed your website and the new design is confusing. Or maybe it's seasonal and happens every year at this time, but you forgot because you weren't tracking it. The point is, you can't see the signal when you're drowning in noise. And most of the noise comes from external sources, other people's opinions, social media, the news, random advice, all of it mixing together and making everything feel more complicated than it actually is. So here's what you need to do. When you're in the middle of chaos, your first job is to filter out the noise. And I mean, aggressively filter it. Stop asking everyone for their opinion. Stop consuming more information. Stop looking for the magic answer out there. Instead, turn inward. Get quiet. And ask yourself very specific questions. Not vague ones like, what should I do? Specific ones. What exactly is the problem? Not, my life is a mess. What specifically is not working? What exactly changed? When did it start? What are the facts, stripped of emotion and interpretation? Is this an emotional problem or a practical problem? Because those require different solutions. If it's emotional, you might need support, therapy, or time to process. If it's practical, you need a plan and action steps. Most situations are a mix, but you need to separate them out. Is this a skill problem or a decision problem? Did something go wrong because you don't know how to do something? Or because you made a choice that didn't work out? Again, different solutions. Skill problems require learning. Decision problems require better frameworks. What's actually within my control here? Not what you wish you could control. What can you actually influence or change right now? These questions cut through the chaos. They force your brain to get specific instead of staying in vague overwhelm mode. Now, once you've filtered the noise and identified the signal, you need to do what I call a mental audit. This is one of the most powerful tools I can give you, and it's criminally underused. A mental audit is basically a structured way of looking at your situation and dividing everything into two categories: what I can control and what I cannot control. I know. You've heard this before. It sounds basic. But here's the thing. Most people don't actually do it. They know the concept intellectually, but they don't apply it practically. So let me walk you through exactly how to do this. Get a piece of paper or open a note on your phone. Draw a line down the middle. On one side, write "in my control." On the other side, write "not in my control." Now, honestly and thoroughly, list everything about your current situation. Everything, the good, the bad, the uncertain, and put each item in the appropriate column. In your control, your effort, your attitude, your habits, your daily actions, what you learn, how you spend your time, who you spend it with, what you consume, how you respond to setbacks, your commitment, your focus, your health choices, not in your control, past events, other people's behavior, other people's opinions, the economy, timing, luck, traffic, weather, how fast things happen, what other people think of you, market conditions, industry trends. Here's what usually happens when people do this exercise. They realize they've been spending 80% of their mental energy on things in the "not in my control" column. And the things in the "in my control" column, they've been ignoring them. This is the harsh truth. You're spinning your wheels on things you can't change while neglecting the things you actually can change. And that's why you're stuck. The mental audit makes this visible. It shows you exactly where your power lives. And more importantly, it shows you where you've been wasting energy. Now, here's the next step, and this is where it gets really practical. Once you've done your mental audit, you need to make a conscious decision to redirect 100% of your energy into the "in my control" column. Not 80%, not 90%, all of it. This means you stop complaining about the economy. You stop dwelling on what someone did to you 5 years ago. You stop obsessing over things you can't change. You let it go. Not because it doesn't matter, but because your energy matters more, and you need to spend it where it counts. Let me give you a real-world example of what this looks like. Sarah is a 38-year-old marketing consultant in Seattle. She had a small but growing client base. Then COVID hit. Within a month, she lost 70% of her clients. Events canceled, budgets cut, contracts terminated. Through no fault of her own, her income essentially disappeared. Now, Sarah could have spent months spiraling. She could have focused on how unfair it was, how she couldn't have predicted a pandemic, how the timing was terrible because she'd just signed a new apartment lease, how the government should have done more, all valid feelings, all true statements, and all completely out of her control. Instead, here's what Sarah did. She gave herself exactly one weekend to freak out. She cried, she was angry, she felt sorry for herself, and then on Monday morning, she did a mental audit. Not in my control, the pandemic, client budgets, event cancellations, the economy, past decisions. In my control, my skills, my network, my ability to pivot, my daily actions, my attitude, my willingness to learn new things. Then she asked herself, what can I do in the next 24 hours that moves me forward? Not what can I do to solve everything. Just what's one step I can take today? She updated her website to reflect virtual services. She reached out to 3 former clients to check in, not to sell, just to maintain the relationship. She signed up for a free webinar on digital marketing trends. 3 small actions, nothing earth-shattering, but movement nonetheless. The next day, she did 3 more small things, then 3 more. Within 2 months, she had rebuilt her client base in a completely different niche. She was offering virtual workshops, something she'd never done before, and within 6 months, she was actually earning more than she had pre-pandemic. Same crisis that hit millions of people, but a completely different outcome because of how she chose to respond. Now, I want to address something important. Deconstructing chaos doesn't mean the problems disappear. It doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy. What it means is that you gain clarity, and clarity is power. When you're clear about what you're dealing with, when you've broken the chaos into manageable pieces, when you've separated what you can control from what you can't, something interesting happens. The fear starts to diminish, because fear thrives in vagueness. It feeds on the unknown. It grows when you can't see the full picture, but the moment you shine a light on it, the moment you get specific, it loses its power. Think about a time when you were worried about something vague, like, I'm worried about my future. That's terrifying because it's so broad. But if you get specific, I'm worried I won't have enough savings for retirement, that's still a concern. But now, it's a problem you can actually address. You can run the numbers. You can make a plan. You can take action. Vague problems feel insurmountable. Specific problems feel solvable. This is why deconstructing chaos is so powerful. It transforms the insurmountable into the solvable. It takes my entire life has fallen apart and turns it into I have 3 specific challenges that I can address one at a time. Here's another key insight. Not every problem needs to be solved. Some problems just need to be accepted, and some need to be bypassed entirely. This is hard for a lot of people to hear because we're taught that every problem has a solution, that if we just try hard enough or think smart enough, we can fix everything. But that's not reality. Some things can't be fixed. They can only be accepted. Like, you can't change the past. You can't make someone love you. You can't control what other people think. You can work on yourself. You can improve. You can grow. But you can't force specific outcomes. And when you waste energy trying to fix the unfixable, you drain yourself. You create frustration. You set yourself up for disappointment. The smart move is to identify what falls into this category and consciously choose acceptance. not defeat, not giving up, acceptance, which means this is what it is. I can't change it, so I'm going to focus my energy elsewhere. And then there are problems that don't need to be fixed or accepted. They just need to be bypassed. These are the problems that seem important in the moment, but actually don't matter in the bigger picture. Like, maybe you're in a disagreement with a colleague about the best way to format a report. You could spend hours debating it, getting frustrated, building resentment. Or you could just let them do it their way and focus on more important things. Bypass. Move on. The ability to distinguish between problems that need solving, problems that need accepting, and problems that need bypassing is a form of wisdom. And it comes from clarity, which comes from deconstructing the chaos. Here's a framework you can use right now. The next time you feel overwhelmed, sit down with a piece of paper and do this exercise. Step 1. Brain dump. Write down everything that's bothering you. Everything. Don't filter. Don't organize. Just get it all out of your head and onto paper. This alone will reduce your mental load by about 30% because you're no longer trying to hold it all in your working memory. Step 2. Categorize. Go through your list and mark each item with S for solve, A for accept, or B for bypass. Be honest with yourself about which is which. Step 3. Prioritize. For the items marked S, put a number next to them. 1 for highest impact, 2 for medium, 3 for low. You're going to tackle these in order. Step 4. Release. For the items marked A or B, literally cross them off or move them to a separate page. You're consciously deciding not to spend energy on them right now. Step 5. Action. Take the highest priority S item and ask yourself, what's one thing I can do about this today? Not 10 things. 1. Then do it. This process takes maybe 20 minutes, but it can completely transform your mental state from chaos to clarity. Now, I want to talk about something that often gets overlooked, the role of environment in creating or reducing chaos. Your environment includes your physical space, but also your digital space, your social circle, your media consumption, your daily routines. All of it impacts how chaotic your life feels. A cluttered desk creates mental clutter. A phone full of notifications creates constant distraction. A social circle full of drama creates emotional chaos. A schedule with no buffer time creates constant stress. Part of deconstructing chaos is looking at these environmental factors and asking, what's creating unnecessary noise in my life? Then systematically removing or reducing it. Maybe that means cleaning your workspace. Maybe it means unfollowing accounts that make you feel bad. Maybe it means setting boundaries with people who drain your energy. Maybe it means creating a morning routine that starts your day with calm instead of rushing. These seem like small things, but small environmental changes can have massive impacts on your mental clarity. Think about it like this. If you're trying to focus on solving real problems, but your environment is constantly pulling your attention in 17 different directions, you're making it way harder than it needs to be. Create an environment that supports clarity instead of chaos. Protect your attention like it's your most valuable resource. Because it is. Let me share one more concept that ties all of this together. It's called the clarity multiplier effect. Here's how it works. When you're in chaos, everything feels hard. Every decision feels monumental. Every action feels exhausting. Your brain is in constant firefighting mode. You're reactive instead of proactive. And your results reflect that. But when you have clarity, when you've deconstructed the chaos and you know exactly what you're dealing with, something amazing happens. Decisions become easier. Actions become more focused. Energy gets conserved instead of wasted. And your results multiply. It's not that you're working harder. You're working smarter. You're putting your energy where it actually matters. And that creates momentum. Momentum is a beautiful thing. Because once you have it, things start to feel easier. One small win leads to another, then another. And before you know it, you're not just managing the chaos anymore. You're actually thriving. But it all starts with breaking things down, with getting specific, with cutting through the noise, with focusing on what you can control, with taking one clear action at a time. Remember, chaos is just unorganized data. Your job isn't to be overwhelmed by it. Your job is to organize it, categorize it, and act on it. One piece at a time, one decision at a time, one day at a time. And I promise you, when you approach your challenges this way, you'll look back 6 months from now and be amazed at how much has changed. Not because the problems got easier, but because you got better at handling them. Lesson 3, the Rapid Response Framework for Mental Clarity. Have you ever had one of those moments where something unexpected hits you out of nowhere and your brain just instantly overloads? Like within seconds, you're flooded with thoughts. What's going to happen? How am I going to handle this? What if it goes wrong? What will people think? And in that mental spiral, you end up doing nothing. You just freeze. This is one of the most frustrating experiences, right? Because you know you need to act, you know you need to do something, but your mind is racing so fast that you can't actually focus on any one thing long enough to make a decision. This is what I call decision paralysis, and it's incredibly common, especially in high-pressure situations when the stakes feel high and time feels short. But here's what I want you to understand. That paralysis isn't happening because you don't know what to do. It's happening because your nervous system is in overdrive and your brain has temporarily lost the ability to think clearly. The good news? There's a way to override this. There's a framework you can use that brings your brain back online, restores clarity, and gets you moving again, even in the middle of chaos. I call it the Rapid Response Framework for Mental Clarity. And it's built on 3 core principles that, when applied correctly, can completely change how you handle unexpected challenges. Let me walk you through it. Principle 1, the 5-minute cool down period. Here's something most people don't realize. The worst decisions you'll ever make happen in the first 5 minutes after something goes wrong. Think about it. Someone sends you an email that pisses you off. What do? You immediately fire back an angry response. Later, you regret it. You get into an argument with your partner. What do? You say something harsh in the heat of the moment. Later, you wish you could take it back. You get bad news about your job. What do? You panic, maybe quit on the spot, maybe send out desperate applications to companies you don't even want to work for. Later, you realize you overreacted. This pattern plays out over and over again because when something stressful happens, your body goes into what neuroscientists call an acute stress response. Your sympathetic nervous system activates. Your amygdala hijacks your prefrontal cortex. Your heart rate spikes. Your breathing gets shallow. Stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline flood your system. And in that state, you're not thinking clearly. You're reacting. Your brain is in survival mode, not strategy mode. The part of your brain responsible for rational thought, planning, and good judgment is temporarily offline. So decisions made in that state, they're almost always emotional decisions, not logical ones. And emotional decisions, while they might feel right in the moment, rarely serve you well in the long run. This is why the first principle of the rapid response framework is so critical. Before you do anything, before you make any decisions, before you take any actions, you pause for 5 minutes. Not 5 hours, not 5 days, 5 minutes. Now, I know what you're thinking. 5 minutes? That's it? That seems too simple. But here's the thing. 5 minutes is enough. It's enough time for your nervous system to start calming down. It's enough time for your prefrontal cortex to start coming back online. It's enough time for you to shift from reactive mode to responsive mode. But here's the key. You have to actually use those 5 minutes correctly. You're not using them to stew in the problem. You're not using them to replay what happened over and over. You're using them to stabilize yourself. Here's what that looks like practically. The moment you feel that surge of stress, that spike of panic, that overwhelming urge to react, you stop. You physically step away if you can. You close your eyes and you breathe. Not regular breathing, deliberate, slow, deep breathing. In through your nose for 4 counts. Hold for 4 counts. Out through your mouth for 6 counts. Repeat. This isn't woo-woo. This is physiology. When you slow your breathing down, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system, which is responsible for calming you down. You literally signal to your body, we're not in danger. We can relax. And as your body calms, your mind follows. The mental fog starts to lift. The racing thoughts start to slow. And you begin to regain access to your rational thinking. Let me give you a real example. James is a 29-year-old software engineer in London. He's been working on a project for 6 months. It's finally launch day. He's excited, nervous, proud. And then, 2 hours after launch, the entire system crashes. Users are complaining. His boss is calling. The client is furious. Everything he worked for is falling apart in real time. James's immediate instinct is to panic, to frantically start changing code, to send out apologetic emails, to do something, anything to make it stop. His heart is pounding, his hands are shaking, his mind is racing with worst-case scenarios. He's about to be fired. His reputation is ruined. This is a disaster. But instead of giving in to that impulse, James remembers the 5-minute rule. He tells his boss, "Give me 5 minutes. I'll call you right back." He walks away from his computer. He goes outside. He takes 10 deep breaths. He lets the initial wave of panic wash over him without acting on it. After 5 minutes, he comes back inside. His heart rate is lower. His breathing is steady. His mind is clearer. Now, instead of panicking, he can think. He systematically checks the logs. He identifies the actual issue. It's not a catastrophic failure. It's a server configuration error. Something fixable. He makes the correction. The system is back up within 20 minutes. Same situation. But because he took 5 minutes to stabilize himself, he responded effectively instead of reactively. And what could have been a career-ending disaster turned into a manageable inconvenience. That's the power of the pause. It doesn't solve your problems, but it puts you in a state where you can solve them. Now, here's the important part. In those first 5 minutes, your brain is going to resist. It's going to tell you, we don't have time for this. We need to act now. This is urgent. Don't believe it. Most things that feel urgent aren't actually urgent. Your brain is just in panic mode, and panic makes everything feel like an emergency. The truth is, taking 5 minutes to get clear will save you hours, maybe days, of cleaning up the mess you'd make by reacting impulsively. So make this a non-negotiable rule. No matter how urgent something feels, you take the pause every single time. Principle 2, categorization for clarity. Okay, so you've taken your 5-minute cool down. Your nervous system is stabilizing. Your mind is clearing. Now what? This is where most people make another mistake. They try to tackle everything at once. They look at their situation and see 100 things demanding their attention, and they try to address all of them simultaneously. This leads to what psychologists call decision fatigue. Your brain has a limited capacity for making decisions each day, and when you try to make too many at once, especially under stress, your decision-making ability deteriorates rapidly. You start making poor choices. You get overwhelmed. You freeze again, and you're right back where you started. So the second principle is categorization. You need to sort through everything demanding your attention and divide it into clear categories. Here's the framework I use. Every task, every problem, every demand on your attention falls into one of two categories: immediate survival or long-term stability. Immediate survival is anything that, if you don't address it right now, will make the situation significantly worse. This is true urgency. Things like stopping a crisis from escalating, addressing a critical deadline, handling a safety issue, responding to something that's actively on fire. Long-term stability is everything else. Things that are important but not immediately urgent. Things that will improve your future but don't need to happen this second. Things like building new skills, strengthening relationships, planning ahead, optimizing systems. Both categories matter, but they require different energy and different timing. The problem most people have is they treat everything like immediate survival. Their brain labels every single thing as urgent, which means they're constantly in crisis mode, constantly reacting, constantly stressed. But when everything is urgent, nothing is actually urgent. You lose the ability to prioritize. You spread your energy so thin that you can't be effective at anything. So after your 5-minute pause, your next step is to ask yourself, what actually needs my attention right now? Not what feels urgent because I'm stressed. What genuinely requires immediate action? Be ruthless about this. Most things can wait. Most emails don't need an instant response. Most problems don't need to be solved today. Most decisions don't need to be made this second. Once you've identified what's truly immediate, you focus there. You give it your full attention. You handle it. And then, only then, you move on to the next thing. Everything else goes into the long-term stability category. You acknowledge it's important. You make a note of it. You'll address it when the immediate crisis is handled, but you don't let it pull your focus away from what matters right now. Let me give you an example. Maria is a 35-year-old freelance photographer in New York. She's in the middle of editing photos from a wedding she shot last weekend. The couple wants them by Friday. It's Thursday afternoon. She's behind schedule, and then her laptop crashes Just completely dies. Won't turn on, won't charge, nothing. Maria's immediate panic response is to think about everything this affects. The wedding photos, her other client projects, her accounting files, her entire portfolio, her backup system, her equipment budget, whether she needs a new laptop, whether she can afford one, what her clients will think. Everything. But instead of spiraling, she pauses. 5-minute cool down. Then she categorizes. Immediate survival. Getting those wedding photos finished by tomorrow. That's it. That's the only thing that absolutely must happen in the next 24 hours. Long-term stability. Everything else. Backing up files properly, buying a new laptop, reviewing other projects, all important, but not immediate. Now that she's clear, she can act. She calls a friend who's also a photographer. She borrows their laptop for the evening. She retrieves her files from cloud storage. She finishes editing. She delivers the photos on time. Crisis handled. Tomorrow, she'll deal with the rest. But today, she focused on what mattered most. That's the power of categorization. It cuts through the noise. It shows you where to put your energy. It prevents you from wasting time on things that don't matter, while the truly important stuff gets neglected. And here's what's beautiful about this. When you categorize clearly, you actually reduce your overall stress. Because now you're not carrying the mental weight of everything at once. You're carrying the weight of one thing at a time. Your brain can handle that. What it can't handle is trying to hold 17 problems in working memory simultaneously while also trying to solve them all. So make this a habit. Every time you feel overwhelmed, stop and categorize immediate versus long-term. Handle the immediate, schedule the long-term. Move forward. Principle 3, the one next right step. Philosophy. All right, you've paused. You've categorized. You know what needs your attention right now, but you're still looking at what feels like a mountain of work. And your brain is saying, I don't even know where to start. This is where the third principle comes in, and it's deceptively simple, but incredibly powerful. You don't focus on the mountain. You focus on the one next right step. Not 10 steps, not the entire plan, just the one thing you can do right now that moves you in the right direction. Here's why this works. When you're overwhelmed, your brain tries to solve the entire problem all at once. It's trying to see the whole journey from where you are to where you want to be. And that distance feels impossible, so you freeze. But when you zoom in and just ask yourself, what's the very next thing I need to do? The answer is almost always clear and doable and specific. Maybe it's making a phone call. Maybe it's sending one email. Maybe it's looking up one piece of information. Maybe it's completing one small task. It doesn't have to be big. It just has to be movement. Because here's the secret. Clarity doesn't come from thinking. Clarity comes from action. You can sit and plan and analyze and strategize all day long, but you won't get clear until you actually start moving. Because action generates feedback. Feedback generates information. Information generates clarity. This is why people who just start often outperform people who spend weeks planning the perfect approach. Not because planning is bad, but because overthinking without action is paralyzing. So instead of trying to map out your entire path forward, just take the next step. Then the step after that. Then the next one. Trust that the path will reveal itself as you walk it. Let me give you a practical example. David is a 41-year-old consultant in Boston. He's been running his consulting practice for 5 years. It's been going well. But lately, he's noticed a decline in new client inquiries. His pipeline is drying up, and he's starting to worry about revenue. David's overwhelmed brain wants to solve everything at once, redesign the website, revamp the entire marketing strategy, start a podcast, write a book, network more, cold email potential clients, update his LinkedIn, hire a business coach. The list goes on, and because the list is so long and each item feels like a massive project, David does nothing. He's paralyzed by the enormity of it all. But then he applies the one next right step philosophy. He asks himself, what's one small thing I can do today that might help? The answer, reach out to 3 former clients just to check in, not to sell, not to pitch, just to reconnect and see how they're doing. That's it. That's the whole step. It takes him 30 minutes. He sends 3 personalized emails. The next day, 2 of them respond. One mentions they've been thinking about bringing him back for another project. Boom. Pipeline restored. David didn't need to do everything on his list. He just needed to do one thing. And that one thing created momentum, which led to the next thing, then the next. Within a month, he had rebuilt his client base through simple, consistent outreach, not because he executed some master plan, but because he took one small step every single day. This is the power of the one next right step philosophy. It removes the overwhelm. It creates momentum. It builds confidence, and it actually gets results. Now, let me address something important. Some of you might be thinking, but what if I take the wrong step? What if I waste time going in the wrong direction? Here's the truth. A step in the wrong direction is still better than no step at all, because at least when you're moving, you get feedback. You learn, you adjust, you course correct. But when you're standing still, paralyzed by the fear of making the wrong choice, you learn nothing. You make no progress. You stay stuck. Perfect is the enemy of good, and good is the enemy of done. Just start. Take the step. See what happens. Adjust. Repeat. Let me give you a framework you can use right now. The next time you're facing a stressful situation and you don't know what to do, follow these 3 steps. Step 1, 5-minute pause. Breathe. Calm your nervous system. Let the initial panic subside. Step 2, categorize. What absolutely needs to happen now? What can wait? Focus on the now. Step 3, one next right step. Don't think about the whole problem. Just ask, what's one small thing I can do right now? Then do it. That's it. That's the entire framework. Simple, right? But simple doesn't mean easy, especially in the moment when your brain is screaming at you to panic. This takes practice. You'll forget. You'll slip back into old patterns. You'll react instead of respond. That's okay. You're human. Just notice when it happens. And next time, try again. Over time, this framework will become automatic. You'll start applying it without even thinking about it. And when that happens, you'll notice something incredible. Situations that used to completely derail you will barely faze you. Not because the situations got easier, but because you got better at handling them. You'll have a system, a process, a reliable way to regain clarity even in the middle of chaos. And that, my friend, is a superpower, because most people don't have this. Most people are just winging it, hoping they'll somehow figure it out when things go wrong. But you'll have a framework, And frameworks create consistency. Consistency creates confidence. And confidence creates results. So remember, pause, categorize, one next step every single time. Your future self will thank you. Lesson 4. Strategic action and resource allocation. Let's talk about something nobody wants to admit. You're working hard, like really hard. You're putting in the hours. You're hustling. You're grinding. You're doing all the things you're supposed to be doing, but somehow you're not getting the results you want. You're busy all day, every day. You go to bed exhausted. You wake up tired. And yet, when you look at what you've actually accomplished, it feels like not much, maybe even nothing. If this sounds familiar, I need you to hear something that might sting a little. Being busy is not the same as being productive, and working hard is not the same as working smart. The harsh reality is this: you can work yourself into the ground and still get nowhere. Not because you're not trying, not because you're lazy, but because you're putting your energy in the wrong places. This is what happens when you confuse motion with progress. You're moving, sure, but you're not necessarily moving forward. And here's the thing: you don't have unlimited energy. You don't have unlimited time. You don't have unlimited mental capacity. These are finite resources, and if you're spending them on low-impact activities, on things that don't actually move the needle, you're essentially burning fuel without going anywhere. This is where strategic action and resource allocation come in. And this might be the most important lesson in this entire framework, because it's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things. Let me break this down for you. Understanding your actual resources. First things first. Before you can allocate your resources strategically, you need to know what resources you actually have. And I'm not just talking about time and money. I'm talking about mental energy, physical energy, emotional bandwidth, focus capacity, and willpower. These are real measurable resources, and they fluctuate throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout your life. Most people don't think about this. They assume they can just push through. They assume they have infinite capacity as long as they try hard enough. And then they burn out and wonder what went wrong. So let's start with an honest audit. Right now, today, what's your actual capacity? On a scale of 1 to 10, how's your mental energy? Are you sharp and focused, or are you already running on fumes? How's your physical state? Are you well rested, healthy, energized? Or are you tired, stressed, running on coffee and willpower? What about your emotional bandwidth? Are you in a good headspace, or are you already dealing with personal stress that's draining you? These aren't abstract questions. They have real implications for what you can realistically accomplish. Because trying to do high-level strategic work when you're mentally exhausted is like trying to run a marathon on a sprained ankle. You can try, but you're not going to perform well. And here's where most people screw up. They don't account for their actual state. They plan their day like they're operating at 100% capacity all the time. And then when they can't execute at that level, they beat themselves up for it. But the truth is, you're not always at 100%. Some days you're at 70%. Some days you're at 40%. And that's okay. That's human. The key is to adjust your expectations and your strategy accordingly. If you're at 70% capacity, you don't take on 100% worth of tasks. You prioritize. You focus on what matters most. you let the rest go. This is what I call adaptive capacity management. You work with your actual state, not your ideal state. Now, let's talk about the biggest resource trap of all, low-impact tasks. The low-impact trap. Here's a scenario I see all the time. Someone is overwhelmed with a major project. It's important. It's challenging. It requires deep focus and strategic thinking. But instead of diving into it, they spend hours doing small, easy tasks, answering emails, organizing files, updating spreadsheets, rearranging their workspace. And at the end of the day, they feel productive. They checked a bunch of things off their list. They were busy the whole time. But the major project, still untouched. This is the low-impact trap. And it's insidious because it feels like you're being productive. You're doing things. You're completing tasks. You're moving. But you're not moving toward what actually matters. You're just creating the illusion of progress while avoiding the hard, high-impact work that would actually change your situation. Why do we do this? Because low-impact tasks are easy. They're comfortable. They give you quick wins and instant gratification. They don't require deep thinking or risk or vulnerability. High-impact tasks, on the other hand, are usually harder. They're uncertain. They require focus and energy and courage. And they often come with the possibility of failure, so we procrastinate on the high-impact stuff by staying busy with the low-impact stuff. And we tell ourselves we're being productive. But here's the hard truth. If you spend all your time on low-impact tasks, you will stay busy and accomplish nothing meaningful. I'm going to say that again because it's critical. You can be busy every single day and still make zero real progress. So how do you break this pattern? You ask yourself one question before you start any task. What's the actual impact of this? Not, is this task useful? Because sure, most tasks are useful in some way. The question is, will this task significantly move me toward my most important goal? If the answer is yes, it's high impact. Prioritize it. Protect time for it. Give it your best energy. If the answer is no, it's low impact. And that doesn't mean you never do it. But it does mean you don't do it when you should be doing high-impact work. Let me give you a real example. Rachel is a 33-year-old content creator in Los Angeles. She's trying to grow her business. Her most important goal is to attract more clients. She knows that creating high-quality content and building genuine relationships with her audience is what will get her there. But when she sits down to work, what does she do? She spends 2 hours tweaking the color scheme on her website. Then she reorganizes her email folders. Then she researches the perfect project management tool. Then she creates a detailed content calendar for the next 6 months. All of these things are useful, but none of them are high impact. None of them are directly attracting clients. Meanwhile, the high-impact tasks, like reaching out to potential collaborators, creating a compelling portfolio piece, or engaging meaningfully with her audience, those get pushed to later. And later never comes. After a month of being busy, Rachel is frustrated. She's worked hard, but her client list hasn't grown. Why? Because she spent all her energy on low-impact tasks. Once she realizes this, she shifts her approach. She identifies her 3 highest impact activities: creating 1 piece of standout content per week, personally engaging with 10 potential clients or collaborators, and publishing case studies of her best work. Everything else becomes secondary. And within 2 months, her client inquiries triple. Same amount of work. But strategic allocation of energy, that's the difference. The shift from why to how. Here's another massive energy drain that most people don't recognize. Dwelling on why. When something goes wrong, our natural instinct is to ask, why did this happen? Why me? Why now? What did I do wrong? These questions feel important. They feel like analysis, like we're trying to understand so we can prevent it from happening again. But here's the problem. Why questions keep you stuck in the past. They keep you analyzing and ruminating without actually moving forward. You can spend hours, days, even weeks trying to figure out why something happened, and at the end of it, the situation is still exactly the same. Why doesn't fix anything. How does. So here's the shift. As quickly as possible, you need to move from why to how. Not, why did I lose that client, but how can I replace that revenue in the next 30 days? Not, why did this project fail, but how can I salvage what's salvageable and move forward? Not, why am I in this situation, but how do I get out of it? This shift is subtle but profound, because how questions force you into solution mode. They direct your brain toward action instead of analysis. And here's the beautiful part. When you're taking action, you often discover the why naturally as a byproduct. But when you're stuck in why, you rarely discover the how. Let me give you a time frame that can help with this. When something goes wrong, give yourself 24 hours to process it emotionally and intellectually. Feel the feelings. Ask the why questions. Understand what happened. But after 24 hours, you shift. Now it's how time. How do I neutralize this situation? How do I prevent further damage? How do I move forward from here? This 24-hour rule creates urgency without denying the need to process. It gives you permission to feel without giving you permission to dwell indefinitely. And that urgency is important, because the longer you stay in why mode, the more momentum you lose. And momentum is everything. Disciplined time blocking. All right, let's get practical. You know your actual capacity. You've identified your high-impact tasks. You've shifted from why to how. Now, how do you actually structure your day to make all of this work? This is where disciplined time blocking comes in. And I want to emphasize the word disciplined, because time blocking only works if you actually stick to it. Here's a concept. Instead of having a vague to-do list and hoping you'll get to the important stuff, you divide your day into specific blocks of time, and each block has a single, clear purpose. Most people operate in reactive mode. They wake up, check their phone, see what's urgent, and spend the entire day responding to whatever comes up. They're ping-ponging between tasks, constantly interrupted, never really focused. By the end of the day, they're exhausted, but they haven't actually accomplished anything meaningful, because they gave their time and energy to whoever demanded it loudest, instead of to what actually mattered. Time blocking flips this. You decide in advance how you're going to spend your time. You protect that time fiercely, and you use each block for its intended purpose and nothing else. Here's what this looks like in practice. Let's say you have 3 major tasks that will actually move the needle. Task A requires deep, creative thinking. Task B requires execution and focus. Task C requires communication and relationship building. Instead of trying to do all 3 at once or randomly jumping between them throughout the day, you block your day. 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Deep work on task A. No phone, no email, no interruptions, just pure focused creative work. 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Execution on task B. This is your implementation time. You're in doing mode, not thinking mode. 1 p.m. to 2 p.m. Lunch and mental reset. 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Communication, block. All your calls, emails, meetings, relationship building for task C happens here. Now, during each block, you're fully present. When you're in your deep work block, you're not checking email. When you're in your execution block, you're not brainstorming new ideas. When you're in your communication block, you're not trying to do focused work. This level of focus dramatically increases your effectiveness because your brain isn't constantly switching contexts. It's not being pulled in 17 directions. It knows exactly what it's supposed to be doing right now. And here's the magic. When you work this way, you accomplish more in 4 focused hours than most people do in 10 scattered hours. But here's the key. You have to protect these blocks. You can't let them get hijacked by whatever pops up. Because things will pop up. Emails will come in. People will ask for your time. Urgent-seeming fires will start. And you'll be tempted to break your block to handle them. Don't. Unless it's a genuine emergency, it can wait. This takes discipline, especially at first. Your brain will fight you on it. But what if this email is important? What if this person needs me right now? Trust the system. If it's truly urgent, they'll find you. If it's not, it'll still be there when you finish your block. Let me give you an example. Marcus is a 39-year-old entrepreneur in San Francisco running a small marketing agency. He's constantly overwhelmed. Clients are demanding. Team members have questions. Email never stops. He's working 12-hour days, but feeling like he's barely keeping up. Then he implements time blocking, 6 a.m. to 8 a.m., strategy and planning. This is when his mind is freshest. He uses this time to think big picture, plan the week, make important decisions. 8 a.m. to 10 a.m., client work. Deep, focused execution on the highest value client projects. 10 a.m. to 11 a.m., team communication, answering questions, giving feedback, unblocking his team. 11 a.m. to 12 p.m., business development, reaching out to potential clients, building relationships, growing the pipeline. 12 p.m. to 1 p.m., lunch and exercise. 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., more client work. 3 p.m. to 4 p.m., email and admin. This is when he processes all the communications that came in during his focus blocks. 4 p.m. to 5 p.m., review and wrap up. He looks at what got done, what needs to roll to tomorrow, and sets up for the next day. He sticks to this schedule religiously for a month, and something incredible happens. He's working fewer hours, maybe 9 hours a day instead of 12, but he's getting more done. His clients are happier. His team is more efficient, and he's not burning out. Same business, same team, same clients. But strategic time allocation changed everything. Now, I know some of you are thinking, this sounds great, but my job doesn't allow for this kind of structure. I have to be responsive. I have to be available. I hear you. And yes, some roles require more flexibility than others. But here's the thing. Even if you can't block your entire day, you can block parts of it. Maybe you can't block off 4 hours. But can you block off 2? Can you block off 1? Can you protect just the first hour of your day for your most important work before you dive into reactivity? Something is better than nothing. Even small blocks of protected time will make a difference. The point is this: your time and energy are your most valuable resources, and how you allocate them determines what you accomplish, not your intentions, not your hopes, your actual allocation. The discipline factor. Here's the final piece, and it's the piece that separates people who implement this successfully from people who try it for a day and then go back to their old patterns. Discipline. All of this, the resource audit, the high-impact focus, the shift from why to how, the time blocking, all of it only works if you consistently apply it. And consistency is hard because your brain will resist. It'll tell you, this is too rigid, I need more flexibility, this feels restrictive. Or it'll tell you, I'll start this tomorrow, today's too chaotic. Or it'll tell you, this worked for a few days, but now I'm too busy to maintain it. These are all excuses, and they're designed to protect you from the discomfort of change. But here's what I need you to understand. The discomfort of discipline is temporary. The discomfort of staying stuck is permanent. You can either be uncomfortable for a few weeks while you build new habits, or you can be uncomfortable for years while you stay overwhelmed and ineffective. Choose your hard. Discipline isn't about being perfect. It's not about never breaking your time blocks or never getting distracted. It's about consistently coming back. It's about noticing when you've drifted and realigning. It's about making the strategic choice more often than not. And over time, that adds up. Those consistent choices compound into significant results. Let me be real with you. Strategic action and resource allocation isn't sexy. It's not a hack. It's not a quick fix. It's a fundamental shift in how you approach your work and your life. But it's also one of the most powerful shifts you can make. Because when you master this, you stop spinning your wheels. You stop exhausting yourself for minimal results. You start making real, measurable progress. And that progress builds confidence, which builds momentum, which builds more progress. It's a beautiful upward spiral. But it starts with one decision. The decision to stop doing more and start doing better. The decision to work strategically instead of reactively. The decision to protect your resources and invest them wisely. So here's my challenge to you. Starting tomorrow, implement one piece of this. Just one. Maybe it's doing a resource audit at the beginning of each day. Maybe it's identifying your 3 highest impact tasks. Maybe it's time blocking just 1 hour for deep work. Pick one. Commit to it for a week. See what happens. I promise you, if you stick with it, you'll see a difference. And once you see that difference, you'll want to do more. Because here's the beautiful truth. You don't need to work harder to get better results. You need to work smarter. You need to be strategic. You need to allocate your limited resources to the things that actually matter. Do that, and everything changes. Lesson 5, Future-Proofing and Resilience Integration. You know what most people do after they survive a crisis? They breathe a sigh of relief and move on. They're just grateful it's over. They want to forget it ever happened. They close that chapter and never look back. And I get it. Who wants to dwell on painful experiences? Who wants to relive difficult moments? It's natural to want to move forward and leave the hard stuff behind. But here's what those people are missing. Every crisis, every challenge, every difficult situation you navigate isn't just a problem you survived. It's a training session. It's data. It's a blueprint for how to handle similar situations in the future. And if you don't extract the lessons from it, if you don't integrate what you learned, then you're essentially wasting the experience. You went through all that pain and difficulty, and you got nothing out of it except relief that it's over. That's a terrible return on investment. So this final lesson is about something most people never do, but absolutely should. It's about taking what you've learned and turning it into a system, a repeatable process, a framework that makes you stronger, more resilient, and better equipped to handle whatever comes next. This is what I call future-proofing and resilience integration. And it's the difference between people who grow from challenges and people who just survive them. Let me show you how this works. Turning experience into blueprint. Here's the first step. After you've successfully navigated a difficult situation, you don't just move on. You pause and you extract a blueprint. What does that mean? It means you sit down and you consciously analyze what just happened, not emotionally, not with blame or judgment, just objectively. Like you're studying a case study. You ask yourself specific questions. What was the actual problem? Not how I felt about it, not the story I told myself. What was the core issue? How did I handle it? What did I do that worked? What didn't work? Where did I waste time or energy? Where was I effective? What would I do differently next time? Not in a self-criticism way, in a learning way. If I face this exact situation again, what's my improved approach? What patterns am I noticing? Is this the first time something like this has happened, or is this part of a recurring pattern in my life? If it's recurring, what does that tell me? These questions turn a random experience into structured learning, and that learning becomes your blueprint. Let me give you an example. Alex is a 36-year-old product manager in Dublin. He's been managing a team for 2 years. Recently, he had a major conflict with one of his team members. The situation got heated. Productivity suffered, morale dropped. It was messy and stressful. Eventually, Alex worked through it. He had difficult conversations. He set clearer boundaries. He improved his communication. The situation resolved. Now, most managers would just be relieved it's over and move on. But Alex takes a different approach. He does a post-crisis analysis. What was the core issue? Unclear expectations and poor communication on his part. He assumed his team member understood what was needed. They didn't. Frustration built on both sides. What worked? Having a direct, honest conversation. Getting curious instead of defensive. Actually listening to the other person's perspective. What didn't work? Avoiding the issue early on. Hoping it would resolve itself. Getting emotional instead of staying professional. What would he do differently? Set clear expectations from the start. Check for understanding regularly. Address small issues before they become big ones. What's the pattern? This isn't the first time unclear expectations led to conflict. It's actually a recurring issue in his management style. Now Alex has a blueprint. He knows his weakness. He knows what works. He knows what to do differently. And the next time a similar situation starts to develop, he'll catch it early and handle it better. That's one crisis that just made him a significantly better manager. Not because he went through it, but because he extracted the learning from it. This is what most people don't do. They go through experiences, but they don't learn from them systematically. So they keep making the same mistakes. They keep getting blindsided by the same patterns. They keep struggling with the same issues. But when you turn your experiences into blueprints, you build what I call a personal operating system, a collection of frameworks and responses that you can draw on whenever you need them. And over time, this operating system gets more sophisticated, more effective, more tailored to who you are and the challenges you face. The crisis post-mortem. Now, let's take this a step further. Beyond just analyzing what happened, you need to do what organizations call a post-mortem. But instead of analyzing a failed project, you're analyzing a difficult life experience. And the key here is brutal honesty. Because if you're just trying to make yourself feel better, if you're just looking for excuses or external factors to blame, you won't learn anything useful. You need to look at your role in the situation with complete clarity, not to beat yourself up, but to identify where you have room to grow. So you ask harder questions. Where was I unprepared? What signals did I miss early on? What assumptions did I make that turned out to be wrong? Where was my judgment clouded? Where did my emotions override my logic? These questions are uncomfortable. They require you to acknowledge your mistakes, your blind spots, your weaknesses. That's not fun. Nobody likes admitting they screwed up. But here's the thing. If you can't acknowledge where you went wrong, you can't fix it. You'll just keep repeating the same patterns and wondering why you keep getting the same results. Let me give you another example. Jennifer is a 28-year-old graphic designer in Melbourne. She's been freelancing for 3 years. Business was going well. She had steady clients, good income. Then, over the course of 2 months, she lost 4 major clients. Her revenue dropped by 60%. She panicked, she scrambled, she tried to figure out what went wrong, and eventually she rebuilt her client base. But it took 6 months of stress and financial strain. Now, Jennifer could just be grateful it's over and move on. Or she could do a crisis post-mortem. She chooses the post-mortem, and here's what she discovers. She wasn't unprepared for losing clients. She was unprepared for losing multiple clients at once. She had no financial buffer. She had no backup plan. She had put all her eggs in a few baskets. She also realizes she missed signals. One client had been slow to pay for months. Another had been decreasing their project scope. These were warning signs, but she ignored them because she was comfortable. She also sees a pattern in her client relationships. She wasn't staying in regular contact. She wasn't asking for feedback. She wasn't building relationships beyond the transactional. So when clients didn't need her services anymore, they just disappeared. There was no loyalty, no connection. This is painful to acknowledge. It means she made mistakes. It means some of this was preventable. But it also means she can do something about it. So Jennifer creates new systems. She builds a 3-month financial buffer. She diversifies her client base. She implements monthly check-ins with every client. She asks for testimonials and referrals. She builds relationships, not just transactions. 6 months later, she loses another client. But this time, it barely affects her. She has a buffer. She has backup clients. And because she's been maintaining relationships, she gets 2 referrals that same week. Same type of event. Completely different impact. Because she did the post-mortem. She learned. She adapted. She built resilience. Building mental frameworks. All right, let's talk about something that sounds abstract but is incredibly practical. Mental frameworks. A mental framework is basically a way of thinking about and approaching a specific type of situation. It's a decision-making structure that you can apply consistently to get better outcomes. Most people operate on instinct. They react to situations based on how they feel in the moment. Sometimes that works out. Sometimes it doesn't. It's inconsistent. It's unpredictable. But when you have strong mental frameworks, you have a reliable way to process information and make decisions, regardless of how you're feeling in the moment. Let me give you an example of a simple mental framework. The Eisenhower Matrix. It's a way of categorizing tasks based on urgency and importance. Urgent and important. Do it now. Important but not urgent. Schedule it. Urgent but not important. Delegate it. Neither urgent nor important. Eliminate it. That's a framework. And if you consistently apply it, you make better decisions about how to spend your time. You don't get pulled into urgency traps. You don't waste time on things that don't matter. Now, you can build frameworks for all kinds of situations. How you respond to criticism, how you make financial decisions, how you handle conflict, how you evaluate opportunities, how you manage stress. Every framework you build becomes part of your operating system, and the stronger your operating system, the more effectively you navigate life. Here's how you build them. You take recurring situations or challenges in your life. You analyze what approach tends to work best. You formalize that approach into a simple, repeatable structure. Then you practice applying it consistently. Over time, these frameworks become automatic. You don't have to think about them consciously, you just apply them naturally. And this is what makes you resilient. Because resilience isn't about being tough or emotionally strong. It's about having reliable systems and frameworks that help you navigate challenges effectively. People who seem unshakable aren't experiencing fewer problems than everyone else. They've just built better frameworks for handling them. Preparing for 2026 and beyond. Let's talk about the future. Not just your personal future, the actual future we're all heading into. Because the world is changing faster than it ever has before. Technology is accelerating. Artificial intelligence is reshaping industries. Jobs that exist today might not exist in 5 years. The economy is unpredictable. Social structures are shifting. The rules are changing constantly. And in this environment, the old approach of work hard and you'll be fine doesn't cut it anymore. You need more than hard work. You need adaptability. You need resilience. You need the ability to learn quickly and pivot when necessary. This is why building these frameworks and systems now is so critical. Because the challenges you face in the future are going to be different from the ones you face today. You can't predict exactly what they'll be, but you can prepare to handle them effectively. How? By developing what psychologists call adaptive capacity. The ability to adjust to new circumstances quickly and effectively without falling apart. People with high adaptive capacity don't freak out when things change. They don't cling to the past. They don't resist the inevitable. They assess the new situation, adjust their approach, and move forward. People with low adaptive capacity get stuck. They fight against change. They insist things should go back to how they were. They struggle to let go of outdated strategies. And they suffer. So how do you build adaptive capacity? Through everything we've talked about in these 5 lessons. The 10-90 principle, deconstructing chaos, the rapid response framework, strategic resource allocation, and now, resilience integration. Each of these is a tool in your adaptive capacity toolkit. And the more you practice using them, the more naturally they come to you when you need them. Think about it like this. If you've never practiced managing a crisis calmly, you're going to panic the first time a real one hits. But if you've been consistently applying these frameworks, even to small challenges, then when a big one comes, you already know what to do. You don't have to figure it out in the moment. You just apply what you've practiced. This is why resilience is a skill, not a personality trait. You're not born resilient. You build resilience through consistent practice and intentional learning. The shift from victim to strategist. Now we come to the most important shift of all. And this is where everything we've talked about comes together. It's the shift from victim mindset to strategist mindset. Let me explain what I mean. A victim mindset sees life as something that happens to you. You're at the mercy of circumstances. You're powerless. Things are done to you. You're reactive. You blame. You complain. You wait for someone else to fix things. People in victim mindset say things like, "Why does this always happen to me? I never get a break. It's not fair. I can't help it. It's just how things are." And look, I'm not saying this to judge. We all slip into victim mindset sometimes. It's a natural response to feeling overwhelmed or hurt. And sometimes you genuinely are the victim of circumstances beyond your control. But here's the problem. Victim mindset keeps you stuck. Because if you see yourself as powerless, you don't take action. You wait for circumstances to change, and they rarely do. Strategist mindset is completely different. A strategist sees life as a series of situations to navigate. Some are good, some are bad, some are easy, some are hard, but all of them are navigable. You're not powerless. You're a player in the game. You make moves. You adapt. You learn. You improve. You take responsibility not for what happens to you, but for how you respond to it. People in strategist mindset say things like, "This is challenging, but what can I do about it? What's my move here? What can I learn from this? How do I use this to get stronger?" See the difference? Same situation, completely different approach. And the approach you take determines your outcome every single time. Let me give you a final example that brings this all together. Two people, same age, same city, same economic background. Both lose their jobs in the same week due to company layoffs. Person A goes into victim mode. "This is so unfair. I worked so hard. I gave them everything, and this is how they treat me. The economy is terrible. Nobody's hiring. I'm too old to start over. I don't know what to do. This is a disaster." Person A spends the next 6 months feeling sorry for themselves. They send out a few half-hearted job applications. They complain to everyone who'll listen. They drain their savings. They get more and more depressed. A year later, they're still unemployed and bitter. Person B goes into strategist mode. "This sucks, but okay. What's my next move? I have 3 months of savings. I need to use that time wisely. What skills do I have that are marketable? What industries are actually hiring? Who in my network might be able to help? What can I learn during this transition that'll make me more valuable?" Person B spends the first week processing the emotions. Then they get strategic. They update their resume and LinkedIn. They reach out to their network. They take a free online course in a skill that's in demand. They apply to jobs strategically, not desperately. They treat job searching like a job itself, with structure and discipline. 3 months later, person B has 2 job offers. They choose the one that pays more and has better growth potential. And because they use the transition period to upskill, they're actually in a better position than they were before they got laid off. Same starting point, wildly different outcomes. The difference? Mindset, approach, strategic thinking versus victim thinking. And here's the beautiful part. This shift from victim to strategist is entirely within your control. It's not about circumstances. It's not about luck. It's about how you choose to see the world and your role in it. When you make this shift, when you truly internalize that you are the strategist of your own life, everything changes. Problems become puzzles. Challenges become opportunities. Setbacks become data. Failures become lessons. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What am I going to do about this?" And that question, that single shift in focus, is what transforms your entire life. The final integration. All right, let's bring this all together, because we've covered a lot. And I want to make sure you walk away with something you can actually use. Here's what solution-oriented thinking really means. It means you accept that life will throw challenges at you. You don't fight against that reality. You don't wish things were easier. You accept that difficulty is part of the deal. But you also accept that how you respond to those challenges is entirely up to you. You're not powerless. You're not a victim. You're a strategist, a problem solver, someone who figures things out. And you build systems and frameworks that help you respond effectively. You practice these frameworks when things are relatively calm, so they're automatic when things get chaotic. You remember the 10/90 principle. The event is only 10%. Your response is 90%. And your response is where your power lives. You deconstruct chaos into data points. You break big, overwhelming problems into smaller, manageable pieces. You filter out the noise and focus on the signal. You use the rapid response framework. You pause before reacting. You categorize what needs immediate attention versus what can wait. You take one next right step instead of trying to solve everything at once. You allocate your resources strategically. You focus on high-impact activities. You shift from why to how. You protect your time and energy like the valuable resources they are. And you integrate your experiences. You turn challenges into blueprints. You do post-mortems. You build mental frameworks. You develop adaptive capacity. You shift from victim to strategist. This isn't just theory. This is a complete operating system for navigating life. And it works, not because it makes problems disappear, but because it makes you capable of handling them. And here's what happens when you consistently apply this approach. You become unshakable, not because nothing bad happens to you, but because when it does, you know exactly what to do. You stop panicking. You stop spiraling. You stop feeling helpless. Instead, you get calm. You get clear. You get strategic, and you move forward. People around you will notice. They'll wonder how you stay so composed under pressure, how you bounce back so quickly from setbacks, how you always seem to figure things out. And the answer is simple. You have a system, and systems beat chaos every single time. Your next step. So here's my final challenge to you. Don't just consume this information and move on. Don't just nod along and think, "That makes sense," and then go back to your old patterns. Actually implement this. Starting today. Pick one framework, just one. Maybe it's the 5-minute pause. Maybe it's the mental audit. Maybe it's time blocking. Maybe it's doing a post-mortem on a recent challenge. Whatever resonates with you most, pick that and commit to practicing it for the next week. Not perfectly, just consistently. Notice what happens. Notice how it changes your approach. Notice how it changes your outcomes. Notice how it changes how you feel. And then, once that framework becomes natural, add another one, then another. Build your operating system piece by piece. Because here's the truth. You can't change your life by just knowing things. You change your life by doing things. By practicing, by building new habits and frameworks, by consistently choosing the strategic response over the reactive one. And it won't always be easy. Some days you'll forget. Some days you'll slip back into old patterns. Some days you'll react instead of respond. That's okay. That's human. Just notice it and choose differently the next time. Over time, these small, consistent choices compound. They build on each other. And 6 months from now, a year from now, you'll look back and barely recognize the person you were, because that person was reactive, overwhelmed, stuck in chaos. But the person you're becoming, that person is strategic, clear, in control, not because life got easier, but because you got better at navigating it. And that's the whole point of solution-oriented thinking, not to eliminate problems, but to eliminate the panic, the paralysis, the overwhelm that problems create, to give you a reliable way to handle whatever comes your way with clarity, confidence, and strategic action. So as we close this out, I want you to remember one thing. You are more capable than you think. You have more power than you realize. And you absolutely have what it takes to handle whatever challenges come your way. You just need the right frameworks, the right mindset, the right approach. And now you have them. So go out there and use them. Build your resilience, strengthen your frameworks, practice your strategies. And watch as the challenges that used to break you start making you stronger instead. Because that's what solution-oriented thinking does. It transforms you from someone who survives challenges into someone who thrives because of them. And in a world that's only getting more complex, more unpredictable, more challenging, that's not just a nice skill to have, it's essential. Welcome to your new operating system. Use it well.